April 12, 1861. A humid dawn in Charleston, South Carolina. The harbor is still, but the air crackles with dread. At Fort Sumter, a squat brick fortress on a man-made island, 85 Union soldiers brace for battle, their cannons trained on the horizon. Across the water, Confederate batteries, manned by Southerners who've declared themselves a new nation, prepare to fire. At 4:30 a.m., a single mortar shell arcs into the sky, exploding over the fort. The boom echoes across the city, waking residents who've dreaded this moment for months. The United States, barely 85 years old, is tearing itself apart. By day's end, the Civil War will begin, a conflict that will claim over 600,000 lives, free millions from slavery, and redefine a nation. This is no ordinary war. It's a crucible that will forge modern America, leaving scars and triumphs still felt today. Welcome to Vestige Files, where we unearth the pivotal moments that shaped history. This is the story of the American Civil War, a tale of division, sacrifice, and a union reborn in blood. To understand the American Civil War, we must rewind to the founding of the United States. In 1776, 13 colonies declared independence from Britain, united by ideals of liberty, but fractured by a moral contradiction: slavery. By 1789, the Constitution bound the states into a federal union, but sidestepped the issue, counting enslaved people as 3/5 of a person for representation while protecting the slave trade. By 1800, the young nation was split in two. The North, with growing cities, factories, and immigrant labor, leaned toward free labor. The South, with vast plantations growing cotton for global markets, depended on enslaved African Americans. 4 million by 1860, a third of the region's population. Cotton was king, fueling half the nation's exports, but its throne rested on human bondage. The 1850s lit the fuse. The Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848, added vast territories, sparking debates over whether they'd allow slavery. The Compromise of 1850, a fragile truce, admitted California as a free state, but strengthened the Fugitive Slave Act, forcing Northerners to return escaped slaves. Tensions flared. In 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act let new territories decide on slavery by vote, unleashing Bleeding Kansas, where pro- and anti-slavery settlers clashed, leaving 200 dead. Abolitionists like Frederick Douglass, a former slave whose fiery speeches swayed hearts, and Harriet Tubman, who led hundreds to freedom via the Underground Railroad, fanned Northern outrage. Meanwhile, Southerners like John C. Calhoun defended slavery as a positive good, claiming it civilized Africans and sustained their economy. Two men stood at the heart of this storm: Abraham Lincoln and Jefferson Davis. Lincoln, born in 1809 in Kentucky, was a self-educated Illinois lawyer, his lanky frame and homespun wit masking a fierce intellect. By 1860, he was the Republican Party's rising star, opposing slavery's expansion while avoiding outright abolition to preserve the Union. His debates with Senator Stephen Douglas in 1858, arguing that slavery was a moral wrong, electrified the nation. Davis, born in 1808, also in Kentucky, was a West Point graduate and Mississippi senator, a polished planter who owned slaves. He saw the South's way of life, including slavery, as sacred, and by 1861 he'd lead a breakaway nation to defend it. Their paths, once parallel, would collide in a war that neither wanted but both embraced. The election of 1860 was the breaking point. Lincoln won the presidency without a single Southern electoral vote, his victory on a platform to halt slavery's spread, terrifying the South. They feared he'd abolish slavery entirely, gutting their economy and social order. Before his inauguration, 7 Southern states, South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas, seceded, forming the Confederate States of America on February the 4th, 1861, with Davis as president. They claimed Fort Sumter, a federal outpost in Charleston's harbor, as their own. Lincoln, sworn in on March 4th, faced an impossible choice: surrender the fort, signaling weakness, or reinforce it, risking war. He sent supplies, not troops, hoping to avoid bloodshed. The South saw it as provocation. On April 12th, Confederate General P.G.T. Beauregard ordered the attack, and Fort Sumter fell after 34 hours. 4 more states, Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina, joined the Confederacy, splitting 11 states against 23 in the Union. The divide wasn't just political, it was personal. Families like the Jacksons in Virginia split. Thomas Stonewall Jackson became a Confederate general, while his sister Laura backed the Union. In border states like Missouri, neighbors turned guns on each other. The North, with 22 million people, had industry, railroads, and a navy. The South, with 9 million, including 3.5 million enslaved, had cotton wealth, skilled generals, and a defensive fight. Both sides expected a quick war. They got a nightmare. The Civil War exploded with a ferocity no one predicted. The First Battle of Bull Run, July 21, 1861, shattered illusions of a short conflict. Near Manassas, Virginia, 35,000 Union troops under General Irvin McDowell clashed with 20,000 Confederates, led by Beauregard and Joseph E. Johnston. Spectators from Washington, expecting a Union rout, picnicked on hillsides, only to flee as Confederates counterattacked, routing the Green Union Army. The battle left 4,700 casualties and a grim truth: this war would be long and bloody. Lincoln called for 500,000 volunteers, while Davis rallied the South, both sides digging in for a fight to the death. The war scale was staggering. By 1865, over 2.2 million men fought for the Union, 900,000 for the Confederacy, in battles from Pennsylvania to Texas. In 1862, the Battle of Shiloh in Tennessee saw 23,000 casualties in 2 days, as General Ulysses S. Grant's Union forces held off a Confederate assault under Albert Sidney Johnston, who died in the fight. The Battle of Antietam, September 17, 1862 in Maryland, was the war's bloodiest day, with 22,700 dead, wounded, or missing. General Robert E. Lee, the Confederacy's brilliant commander, invaded the North but was repelled by George McClellan's cautious Union Army. The slaughter shocked both sides, but it gave Lincoln a chance to shift the war's purpose. On January 1, 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring slaves in Confederate territories free. It didn't end slavery outright. Union border states kept it. But it reframed the war as a moral crusade, galvanizing Northern support and discouraging European powers like Britain, who'd abolished slavery, from aiding the South. Enslaved people, hearing of the proclamation, fled plantations, with 180,000 joining Union armies as soldiers or laborers, tipping the war's balance. Frederick Douglass praised it, but warned freedom wasn't won yet. In the South, Davis and Lee doubled down, their armies fighting not just for independence, but to preserve slavery, their cornerstone, as Confederate Vice President Alexander Stephens called it. The war's turning point came in 1863. At Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, July 1st to 3rd, Lee's second northern invasion met 94,000 Union troops under General George Meade. The 3-day battle, with 51,000 casualties, ended in a Union victory, halting Lee's advance. Simultaneously, Grant captured Vicksburg, Mississippi, splitting the Confederacy along the Mississippi River. The South's hope dimmed, but the war ground on. In 1864, Lincoln appointed Grant general-in-chief, who waged total war, grinding down Lee's army. General William Tecumseh Sherman's March to the Sea, November-December 1864, cut a 60-mile-wide path through Georgia, burning crops and railroads, crippling Confederate morale. The human cost was gut-wrenching. Soldiers like Joshua Chamberlain, a Maine professor turned Union colonel, saw comrades fall at Gettysburg's Little Round Top, holding the line against impossible odds. In the South, women like Clara Barton nursed wounded, while enslaved people like Harriet Jacobs risked death to aid Union spies. Families were torn apart. In Tennessee, the Carter family saw brothers fight on opposite sides, one dying for the Union, another for the Confederacy. Disease killed twice as many as bullets. Smallpox, dysentery, and gangrene ravaged camps. By 1865, the South was starving. Its economy collapsed under Union blockades, while Northern factories churned out rifles and ships. Lincoln and Davis faced mounting pressure. Lincoln, re-elected in 1864 despite war weariness, pushed for the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery, sensing victory. Davis, defiant in Richmond, refused surrender, even as Lee's army dwindled to 35,000. In April 1865, Grant's 120,000 men besieged Petersburg, Virginia, the gateway to Richmond. On April 2nd, Lee abandoned the capital and Richmond fell. On April 9th at Appomattox Courthouse, Lee surrendered to Grant, effectively ending the war. The terms were generous. Confederate soldiers could go home, keeping their horses. Davis fled. Captured in Georgia on May 10th. The Confederacy was dead. The Civil War ended on April 9th, 1865, but its shadow stretched long. The Union was preserved, and the 13th Amendment, ratified in December 1865, abolished slavery, freeing 4 million African Americans. Reconstruction began, aiming to rebuild the South and integrate freed people into society. The Freedmen's Bureau provided food, schools, and land, while black men gained the vote under the 15th Amendment, 1870. But victory was bittersweet. Lincoln, the war's architect of unity, was assassinated on April 14, 1865, by John Wilkes Booth, a Confederate sympathizer, plunging the North into grief. Vice President Andrew Johnson, a Southerner, took over, clashing with Congress over Reconstruction's pace. The war's toll was staggering: 620,000 dead, 360,000 Union, 260,000 Confederate, more than all other U.S. wars combined to that point. The South lay in ruins, its plantations burned, its railroads wrecked. Families like the Wilsons of Alabama lost sons and homes, rebuilding amid poverty. Freed people faced new struggles. Sharecropping trapped many in debt, and white supremacist groups like the Ku Klux Klan, formed in 1865, terrorized black communities. By 1877, Reconstruction ended as Northern troops withdrew, leaving Southern states to impose Jim Crow laws, segregating and disenfranchising African Americans for decades. Yet the war birthed moments of resilience. Frederick Douglass became a global voice for justice, his autobiography a testament to freedom's cost. Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross in 1881, inspired by her wartime nursing. African Americans like Robert Smalls, who stole a Confederate ship to escape slavery, became Reconstruction-era congressmen, symbolizing hope. The war reshaped America's identity. The federal government grew stronger, industry boomed, and the 14th Amendment, 1868, guaranteed equal protection, though its promise took a century to realize. The North's victory ensured a single nation, but debates over states' rights and race lingered, echoing in 20th century civil rights struggles and today's cultural divides. Globally, the war shifted power. The Union's industrial might and naval blockade showcased America's rising strength, deterring European meddling. The Confederacy's fall ended hopes of a slave-holding empire, inspiring abolition movements worldwide. By 1900, the U.S. was a global power, its Civil War a cautionary tale of division's cost. Today, battlefields like Gettysburg draw millions, their cannon-scarred fields a reminder of sacrifice. Statues of Lincoln and Lee spark debate, reflecting unresolved questions of memory and justice. The American Civil War was a nation's reckoning, a bloody forge that preserved a union and ended slavery, but left wounds unhealed. Lincoln, the rail splitter who held a nation together, and Davis, the planter who led a doomed rebellion, embodied a divide that tested America's soul. Was the war an inevitable clash of ideals, or a tragedy that could have been avoided? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this dive into America's crucible moved you, hit that like button, subscribe to Vestige Files, and ring the bell for more stories of history's turning points.